Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name's Angie H, and today is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. I already said my name, but yeah, my name's Angie. I am a recovered Al-Anon and will be leading this meeting. We want to welcome everyone to our Al-Anon Big Book Recovery meeting. This is a step speaker meeting that meets every Wednesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will study the 12 steps by using the precise instructions out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as they relate to us as Al-Anon. Let's get our meeting started. This is the original AA preamble written by the AA Grapevine describing the fellowship in 1940. We study the preamble with an open mind and open heart to consider how it applies to Al-Anon. This helps us to stay focused on the message of recovery the pioneers intended while observing the traditions in action. Through the actions taken based on the instructions of the basic text, we comprehend what the pioneers meant when they described the membership of AA, which is that they worked a program of recovery and they no longer drank. In our case, we no longer obsessed over the alcoholic. Through continuous action and study of these principles, the understanding of the value of the original preamble reveals itself. We ask for your humble consideration of our sincere admiration of the pioneers of Alcoholics Anonymous. The simple hope is that we of Al-Anon will grow into the same clarity and unity that birthed the original 12-step fellowship, because without them, after all, none of us would be here. Okay. I already read that. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. We are gathered here because we are faced with the fact that we are powerless over alcohol and unable to do anything about it without the help of a power greater than ourselves. We feel that each person's religious views, if any, are his own affair. The simple purpose of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is to show what may be done to enlist the aid of a power greater than ourselves, regardless of what our individual conception of that power may be. In order to form a habit of depending upon and referring all we do to that power, we must at first apply ourselves with some diligence. By often repeating these acts, they become habitual, and the help rendered becomes natural to us. We have come to know that, as alcoholics, we suffer from a serious disease for which medicine has no cure. Our condition may be the result of an allergy, which makes us different from other people. It has never been permanently cured by any treatment with which we are familiar. The only relief we have to offer is absolute abstinence, the second meaning of AA. There are no dues or fees. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. Each member squares his debt by helping others to recover. An Alcoholics Anonymous member is an alcoholic who, through the application of an adherence to the AA program, has forsworn the use of any and all alcoholic beverages in any form. The moment he takes so much as one drop of beer, wine, spirits, or any other liquid containing alcohol, he automatically loses all status as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. AA is not interested in sobering up drunks who are not sincere in their desire to stay sober for all time. Not being reformers, we offer our experience only to those who want it. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and on which we can join in harmonious action. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our program. Those who do not recover are people who will not or simply cannot give themselves to the simple program. Now, you may like our program or you may not, but the simple fact remains that it works, and we believe is our only chance to recover. There is a vast amount of fun included in the AA fellowship. Some people might be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity, but just underneath there lies a deadly earnestness and a full realization that we must put first things first And with each of us, the first thing is the solution to our alcoholic problem. To drink is to die. Faith must work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. In order to set our tone for this meeting, I ask that we bow our heads in a few moments of silent prayer and meditation, followed by the Serenity Prayer. Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. I wish to remind you that whatever is said at this meeting expresses our own individual opinion as of today and is of up to this moment. We do not speak for AA as a whole, and you are free to agree or disagree as you see fit. In fact, it is suggested that you pay no attention to anything which might not be reconciled with what is in the AA Big Book. If you don't have a big book, it is time you bought one. Read it, study it, live with it, follow the directions in it, and learn what it means to be in AA. And that's the end of the preamble. A sponsor is anyone who has had a psychic change as a result of working the steps and has the willingness to work with others. For those looking for a sponsor to guide them through the steps, please stay tuned and have your pens ready to record phone numbers immediately after the meeting. Each Al-Anon group ought to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying the message to the Al-Anon who still suffers. This is our primary spiritual aim. Our job as a group is to provide people with a place to learn about and work the steps. It has been our experience that working the steps consistently provides us with a better state in our life. We consider all else to be an outside issue. This includes personal problems. The proper venue for sharing such problems is with a sponsor. This is, after all, where real recovery takes place in working the steps with a sponsor. We are just so glad we are all here, and we are all here because we are not all there. There will be a period of fellowship after the meeting if you have questions, if you need a sponsor, if you need to check in or get current, or if you want to discuss other literature, please stick around for the fellowship. That would be a better time for these subjects. All right. So this meeting, we are going to be discussing steps 1 through 3 today. And then, the second Wednesday of the month, we'll follow up with steps 4 through 6 and also do a review of the previous steps. The third Wednesday, we'll do steps 7 through 9. And the fourth Wednesday, we will finish off with the steps 10 through 12. And again, I will be doing a little recap of the steps that we did the prior Wednesday. So we'll go ahead and jump right in here. And again, we're using the Alcoholics Anonymous 4th edition, or at least I am using that today. And I actually hear they're in the works of making a 5th edition, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, we used this textbook because it was the original textbook that the pioneers of AA used to get recovered. And so you may be asking yourself, why are we using Alcoholics Anonymous books instead of an Al-Anon book? But if we want to know everything about an illness that a loved one has, we should probably study it and learn about it. And so we can have an understanding and compassion for not only the alcoholic, because it's a very misunderstood illness, right? But so is our illness as an Al-Anon, right? It's very misunderstood. And so, the first few chapters are really diving in to what our problem is and what the alcoholic's problem is. So these first 3 steps, they are decision steps, but they're actually super important. And most of us come here already at step 1. You wouldn't be here if you had it figured out and you were already connected to a higher power and, all of that. But we're here because that hasn't the way that we're working our life hasn't been working out, right? And so this textbook is going to help us get in touch with a power greater than ourselves and stay connected. And that's what we need. So, if you don't have a big book today, you can find one on the AA website. There's so many different versions of it today. But I just want to throw that out there if you don't have one, today. So yeah, I already said the first 3 steps are decision steps, and we really have to understand our step 1 before we can apply the solution, right? So I'm going to start right on the title page of the big book, and right on that title page it says, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. So right on that title page, we just start to get some hope, right? This is a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body because, gosh, we have Al-Anon who've tried literally everything to stop obsessing and controlling the loved ones in our life. And I say loved ones because it not always is an alcoholic, right? Maybe we were raised in an alcoholic home, but now we're not living with any alcoholics. Well, that can manifest itself in all areas of our life. So I just want to make that kind of clear that this can be anyone that we're obsessed and trying to control and manage. So yeah, we get hope just from this title page. And again, we have tried everything to stop, but we can see here that they recovered. And this is a story of how many thousands have recovered, right? This isn't just the story of one, not one person, but the story of thousands when this was written. So we get some hope because, man, if it worked for them, if they could get, recovered, then we can apply these same principles and find recovery. So we're moving to the preface, which is XI. Sorry, my ring. Preface XI. Because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. So, yeah, I already kind of talked about this in the beginning, but this is the basic text that the pioneers used. And so, yeah, kind of like if it's working, why fix it? Like, why? We don't have to add anything to this, right? Like, the solution is the first 164 pages, and it has not been touched. It's sacred because it works, and they know it works. But if we go in and, we can use the example, let's say if our grandma has like a famous cookie recipe and we want to bake those cookies, well, we're going to have to follow it precisely as it was written, or we're not going to get the same, we're not going to get the same cookie. So we have to follow this precisely. And if we do, then we get that recovery that's promised to us. Moving on here to the forward to the first edition, XIII, and this says, this was written in 1939. Okay, so we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person, and besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. So, and this is telling us that the reason they made this book is to show us how they got recovered, right? It's to show us the steps to take to find a higher power, to get connected, to stay connected, and continue growing in our steps, right? In our spiritual effectiveness. That's the whole purpose of this book. It's not telling us that this book is to get your loved ones to stop drinking. And it's not even saying the whole purpose of this book is to stop obsessing. It's not, because we have to get tapped into that higher power. It's that's the bottom line. It's finding that higher power, staying connected, and turning everything over to that higher power. So we study this book so that we have an understanding of our illness as well as the alcoholic. And this is going to help us. Once we study this and have more of an understanding, then we're able to help others. But if we come here and, we have a misunderstanding of what our step one is, then we're not going to be able to be helpful, right? So it's really important that we grasp this. And step one, it says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. And so you may think that's weird, but this step one, it's the same for Al-Anon. And I'll explain why. But if you've been in the rooms for a while, or maybe if you're brand new, you may think, well, what? I'm not powerless over alcohol. And unless you do have that alcoholic gene, you're not actually powerless over alcohol. But I'll explain that since the loved one in our life is powerless over alcohol and their lives become unmanageable, we are also powerless over alcohol because the loved one in our life is powerless, right? There is nothing that I can do to stop them or fix them or control and manage because I'm a human, right? And any human aid solutions, if you become chronic, are not going to work. So that is why we say we are powerless over alcohol, because our loved one is powerless over alcohol, right? And no matter what we do to try and stop them, it's not enough, right? So we do not have the power. We don't. And that's something that's really hard for us because we want the best for our loved ones, right? Like obviously it's horrible. It's a terrible illness and it's bad to see them suffer and, die. A lot of times people die, from this illness, before they even get here. So it's a terrible illness and we don't want to see our loved ones suffer. So we want to meddle, but it's not actually doing any good. And, our motives are selfish. And that's hard, again, for us to wrap our minds around because we're good people, right? And they're good people. They don't want to drink. They don't want to drink for their ease and comfort, but that's the way that their mind is wired. They have that alcoholic gene. So, it's just one of those, it's a very difficult illness for us to sit and watch. And, we mean well, but our trying to get them to stop is because we feel uncomfortable. We feel so uncomfortable. And so we're trying to fix it because, if we can fix it and control and manage, then we'll feel okay, right? Like that's how we get our ease and comfort. So just wanted to clear that up because a lot of times we think, well, my step one is that I'm powerless over the alcoholic or I'm powerless over people. I'm powerless over places or things. And that's just not true, right? We do have power. We do. But it's just a different way of understanding the step one. So it's really about, have you tried everything to stop obsessing and controlling your loved one? And if you have, and you just keep going back to it, even though you've sworn that you're not going to do it again, then, you're probably chronic. Okay, I'm going to move on before I run out of time. So the doctor's opinion, we're going to move to the doctor's opinion. And this letter was written by Dr. Silkworth, and he specialized in sobering up alcoholics at Towns Hospital. So he actually wrote this letter, and it really just backs up the 12-step program of recovery. So in this letter, he talks about how he came across a variety that he was not able to help, right? He came across this variety of alcoholics that was just, he was baffled by it, right? I mean, he did everything he could, and this type would just go right back out and start drinking again. So he wrote this, and on page XXVIII, it says, "We believe and so suggested a few years ago that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all." So yeah, he's talking about this allergy. And so the alcoholic has a body and mind. It's a two-part fold of the illness, right? So for an alcoholic, I mean, they take that drink and, it's like drinking salt water. They're going to need more and more and more of it. And so they take that first drink, and it sets up that phenomenon of craving, and then they're just off and running. They can't stop. So again, like once they start to drink, that sets that spree, and they just can't stop. For us, like if we engage in trying to control and manage and, all this stuff that we do in our Al-Anonic ways, in our Al-Anonic illness, then we start that phenomenon of craving, and then we can't stop. So, we think like the alcoholic drinks. That's kind of how I like to look at it anyways. So it goes on to say that frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. So, this frothy emotional appeal. So if we look at the alcoholic in our life, or our loved ones that we're trying to control and manage, we are that frothy emotional appeal, right? Because we're trying to help. Our motives are grounded in selfishness, though, and we're trying to help because they're making us uncomfortable, all right? So we're trying to fix them and everything that they're doing, and but it's not going to work, right? Like we might suggest things like we might leave the big book open for them. We might be looking up articles and sending it to them, or, all these ways to try to control and manage them. And it's not enough, right? It says they need a power greater than themselves and a message in depth and weight. So what they need is another alcoholic to give them the depth and weight, right? It's sharing how they recovered, and I was saying another alcoholic needs to help another alcoholic. And Al-Anon needs to help another Al-Anon, right? So we're the frothy emotional appeal. It's not depth and weight, right? They need a power greater than themselves and a depth and weight message. And they get that when they come and they hear the recovered members sharing their story of where they used to be and where they are today, right? So again, like we have tried all of these human aid solutions ourselves to stop and controlling our loved ones, but it doesn't work, right? We can't stop. We can't stop our crazy minds. They just keep coming up with new, and we think our ideas are the best, right? Like we come up with these best, like they're the best ideas and the best plans. And really coming here and working these steps, it really is like an ego deflation process, right? Like we really are humbled when we come here and we work these steps with a sponsor, and we have more of an understanding of why we're selfish and all of that. So I'm not going to get too far ahead, but so we try all these things like therapy and yoga retreats and self-help books and all the self-care and, bubble baths and taking a walk, and maybe it works for a time, but eventually if you're chronic, which means you have lost that power to stop and stay stopped, then you're going to go right back into that crazy thinking, right? Just like the alcoholic will go right back into drinking, right? No matter what kind of consequences or what's at stake, it's not going to be enough to stop. Okay. So men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. Okay, so there's a lot in this paragraph, right? But right in the beginning, it says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect. So yeah, they like the effect. It gives them, it's like a social lubricant. It's their solution to life, right? And for us, we like that feeling of being in control and managing the loved one, the alcoholic in our life, right? Because it gives us that sense of ease and comfort. Again, we can try all sorts of methods to stop, but they're gonna fail if we're chronic. So, but we have to try everything before we get here, right? That's another part of this puzzle piece. Because if we haven't tried everything and we have any kind of, reservation, that something might work, some self-help thing might work, then we need to try it, right? That's really important. So let's see what else. So yeah, if a drinker starts drinking and then, they become powerless and, they probably have that alcoholic gene, there's a good chance that they're probably going to end up the chronic variety, right? So there's really, there's nothing more. Once you become that chronic type, you have to have a power that's greater than yourself because you are without that choice to stop and stay stopped, right? It's not a matter of willpower anymore once you cross over that imaginary line. So yeah, basically we get stuck. We get really stuck in this cycle. And, the alcoholic, they say, well, no, that's it. I feel horrible, forever long they stay in their binge. I don't know, it's different for everyone, right? But, they could pass out and then wake up and, start drinking again. But, they might snap out of it and, for us, we might be like, well, we have family coming for Thanksgiving. Like, can you just stop drinking? And they might do it. They might white knuckle it and it's going to be very hard for them and they could maybe do it for a time or two and, but then eventually life's going to happen and, as it does, and they're going to go right back to it without having that psychic change. That is what we're going to keep doing. We just get stuck in this endless cycle. And it's exhausting, right? And for us, it's exhausting too. Like we just sit there and we're trying to control and manage and, like if you really loved me, you would stop and, we put up, we aren't causing the alcoholic to drink, but, and we can kind of push them, to hit their rock bottom quicker, the more that we are trying to enable. So, it's just something to think about. And again, we can't work these steps on our own. We have to have a sponsor to help guide us. So, let's move on here. Okay. Once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. So, yeah, like, again, I talked about this before, but it is a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And so for us, we think, well, I've tried everything, and, I've bought all these codependent books and Al-Anon books and, how to stop obsessing, and I can't do it. I can't do it. So how is this going to work? And we think that way. And then when we get here and we hear the recovered members sharing their story, we start to get a little hope, right? It's that depth and weight. And the same is true for the alcoholic. They may think there's no way out, but, you may think that you're so far down and so doomed, but all we have to do, and this is the simple part, right? All we have to do is follow these simple steps. And it says they're simple. That means they're simple and they're easy to understand, right? But there are some difficult steps, and, it's going to take some work, but it's our medicine, right? And if we want to stop obsessing and going on this cycle, we're going to have to follow these steps. But this, again, this paragraph gives us some hope, right? All right, let's move on. We're going to move to, there's a solution, chapter 2, and I'm going to talk about page 20. So, okay, page 20. You may already have asked yourself why it is that all of us became so very ill from drinking. Doubtless, you are curious to discover how and why. In the face of expert opinion to the contrary, we have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. If you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it, you may already be asking, what do I have to do? So, yeah, this really boils down to how desperate enough are you to stop this, endless cycle, like this hamster wheel that we're stuck on of trying to control and manage our loved one, right? That's what they're talking about. We have to be at our bottom and just be so tired of being sick and tired that we are willing to do anything. I know for me, if my sponsor told me to stand in a corner on my head, I would have done it, right? I got recovered just by standing in a corner on my head. Okay, I'll do that. Because I was so tired of being sick and tired. I was just so tired. And that's it, right? That's it. So it is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. We shall tell you what we have done. Before going into a detailed discussion, it may be well to summarize some points as we see them. So I already kind of talked about this, but the whole purpose of this book is so that we can get connected to a power that's greater than ourselves. Because, again, if you're here, you're probably chronic and you have lost that power to stop, right? No matter how much you want to stop and no matter what's at stake, the consequences, it may cause problems in our marriage and relationships and all this stuff, but it's not enough, right? It's not enough for us. We have to find a power that's greater than ourselves. So how many times have people said to us, I can take it or leave it alone. Why can't he? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl. I should think he'd stop for her sake. The doctor told him that if he ever drank again, it would kill him. But there he is, all lit up again. So, this, these are the things that we probably have said, right? And also, we can turn this around, and relate it to ourselves, right? We have loved ones and friends that are hey, I'm really worried about you. Like you haven't left your house in weeks because you're just sitting up at all hours of the day researching how to make your alcoholic stop drinking or whatever the case may be, right? We're not taking care of ourselves. We don't know how to do that. All we know how to do is how to control and manage others in our life, our alcoholic loved ones. Like we're really good at doing that. But we can't take care of ourselves. And that is selfish, right? Because we have to take care of ourselves. But when we're putting other people ahead of our own, needs, then that becomes a big problem, right? Many of us don't even go to the doctor. We're just so wrapped up in how to help the alcoholic or how to help our loved ones that we can't take care of ourselves. So we're going to talk about the different types, right? Because not everyone that grew up in an alcoholic home or has a loved one that's an alcoholic needs to be here, right? This is for the chronic type. Now, anyone's welcome. Anyone is welcome that has a loved one who is an alcoholic, but you may not necessarily need to work a 12-step program for your Al-Anon illness if you're not powerless. So, moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. So the moderate and the hard, they kind of look similar, right? But the moderate drinker, or for our case, like the moderate Al-Anonic, we can give it up, right? Like if there's a good reason for it, we can take it or leave it. So, again, like that's not somebody who needs to work a 12-step program yet. And, for whatever reason, this moderate drinker may or may not end up chronic. We don't know. And we may or may not end up chronic Al-Anonic. But, then we have the real alcoholic. He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. So, again, this is just showing the different types. And this is really important because it is a self-diagnostic program, right? I can't go around and just start diagnosing everyone and say, oh yeah, you sound like me. You should work a 12-step program. No, because they may not be chronic, right? But all we do is share our story and our experience and see if that newcomer can relate, right? And so, yeah, not everyone needs a 12-step program. It just is a matter of if you are chronic, if you have crossed over that imaginary line into the chronic zone, if you will. So here is a fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day, and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. He is often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor, but in that respect he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. He is a fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around. Yet early next morning he searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. If he can afford it, He may have liquor concealed all over his house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe. As matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet his nerves so that he can go to work. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedatives, with which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. So again, this whole paragraph is talking about the chronic type, and they aren't bad people, but they have an illness and they're powerless, right? They just can't stop. And it's really sad to read this, right? And for us, we're the same, right? Like, we're not bad people. We mean well. Of course, we want our loved ones, to be healthy and, all of that good stuff, but, we can't stop. We're powerless. So, again, this is showing all of the things that the alcoholic may try to stop. And, we do the same thing, right? We try all these human aid solutions, and, unfortunately, some of us do, lose our life too, right? Because we can go insane trying to control and manage everyone in our life. So, if you're moderate or a hard Al-Anonic, these human aid solutions that we try can maybe work for a time, right? But what differentiates us from the chronic is that if you are chronic, you will go back eventually, right? So that's the cunning and baffling part of this illness, because we are able to stop and moderate sometimes. But again, we have to know in our heart of hearts that we have tried everything. Otherwise, this just isn't going to work. So, on page 23, it says, these observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than his body. If you ask him why he started on the last bender, the chances are he will offer you one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. So again, the alcoholic has a body and mind component, right? They take that first drink and they get a little bit of that ease and comfort, which they're looking for, and that just sets that ball rolling. They can't stop after that. So it's just really telling us that, it starts in our mind, right? If the alcoholic just never picked up, then they wouldn't continue to drink, right? But where, the thought originates in between their ears, right? It's the mind that is broken. It's the mind that needs to be fixed. And we get that again by working these steps. So, we can kind of relate this to the alcoholic in our case too, because, for us, we have friends that are like, well, just stop worrying about him. Just leave him alone. Stop trying to fix him, just, or move out or do all of these things, but we can't, right? We just keep having these thoughts. And once we take that first thought, we're off and running. And then we're acting on our thoughts and it just messes. We get stuck in the cycle and it's terrible. It's like a cycle of hell. And we keep coming back to it. No matter how many times this doesn't work out for us and we keep setting these firm resolutions, we just keep going back. We can't stop. So the problem centers in our mind. And it's not the alcoholic that's triggering us. It's our mind, right? And I like to say this because my sponsor has been using this analogy a lot, but the call is coming from inside the house. Just like, the some of the scary movies out there, like the babysitters watching the kid, and the phone call is coming from inside the house, right? And that's the same for us. There's nobody that's triggering us. It's just our mind. We want to try to control and manage, and we're broken. We have a broken mind. Okay, so I'm going to move to page 24, and it says, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. So, yeah, first of all, I just want to point out that this paragraph is written in italics. So anytime you see italics in the big book, they really want you to pay attention to that. So, they have lost the power of choice in drink, or in our case, we have lost the power of choice in our control and management, right? And it's not a matter of willpower at this point. Again, I've repeated this so many times, but once you cross over that line, there's not a matter of willpower. We are unable to stop and stay stopped, right? And it doesn't matter, like, our brain has a shelf life. It says a week or a month ago. So the alcoholic could have had their, spree of all sprees, a week or a month ago. And guess what? Their mind, they have this mental blind spot, and so do we. We don't remember all of that guilt and remorse that we felt, all of that suffering that we felt after we tried to control and manage, and after they, woke up from their, drinking and, their drinking spree. They can't remember how terrible it was and all, they can't remember it because they can't see the truth from the fall, and their mind is just really good. So their mind has a mental blind spot, and so does ours. So, and yeah, we think we're being helpful by, helping them toward their program, or, all of the stuff that we might try to do to get them to stop. But, our motives they are because we want that ease and comfort, right? We're trying to control and manage and manipulate because we need that sense of ease and comfort. So we get stuck in that cycle again, and we have no defense against our first thought, just like the alcoholic does not have a defense against that first drink, right? That first thought comes to mind, and boom, yeah, I'll have a drink because that'll take the edge off, right? And for us, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to leave the big book open on this page and let them read it today. And, we do all these crazy things. So when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history. So yeah, that's, once we can admit that we have tried everything to stop and, we're done, then, that brings us to step 2. It's really just being at that place of recognizing that we have tried everything and we're done, right? We're done trying to figure this out. So let's see. It says there is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings which this process requires. But we saw that it really worked in others. And we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. And yeah, the simple kit, that's it, right? Our job when we get recovered is just to pass on that simple toolkit and, it's not up to us whether or not a prospect or a newcomer is interested in working these steps. We're just trying to pass this on because we know it has worked for us, right? So yeah, let's see. So it's saying, like, basically, as long as we work our program and we're doing our best to carry this message to others that are still suffering, then we will get that daily reprieve, right? It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take action, which we'll talk about later. But again, like, we have to do the work or, we will go back. And just a good reminder to us that are recovered too. We have to work this every single day, and there's no graduation, right? So, but we can be okay regardless if the alcoholic in our life is getting recovered, right? Our program is not linked to whether or not the alcoholic in our life gets recovered or not, right? We can be okay because we're going to have that power that's greater than ourselves. And that's all that we need. So let's see, on page 43, once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such defense. His defense must come from a higher power. Okay, yeah, just like another good reminder there that there's no defense against it, right? We're powerless once we are a pickle. We cannot go back to being a cucumber. Okay, I'm going to move on to We Agnostics, which is a great chapter because I know for myself, I did not have a higher power when I came here and really just was nervous to do this and really thought it was a God program. And that's not the case, right? This is a spiritual program. So it says, on page 45, it says, lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how are we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. So, again, lack of power, that's our problem, right? We learn that when we get here, because when we get here, we've tried everything and it hasn't worked. So, we're without power. So if we're out of power, we need a power that's greater than ourselves. And the cool thing about that is it can be anything that's of your own conception, as long as it's greater than yourself. That's it, right? So this whole purpose of this book is to help us tap into that power and stay tapped in throughout the day, so that we don't go down the crazy rabbit hole of thinking, right? So yeah, that is really all you need to take your second step, is really just recognizing that you are done trying to figure this out. You're powerless over alcohol, because your alcoholic loved one is powerless over alcohol, and that your life has become unmanageable, right? And that's it, right? So that if you're powerless and your life has become unmanageable, then why not get a new way of living your life? And so we're going to make that decision in step 2. We're going to come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, right? So we just need to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we empathetically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. So, the beautiful thing here is all we need is willingness. And that is really throughout this book. I can't tell you how many times the word willingness is used, but it's used so many times. So probably hundreds. I don't know. But all you have to do is have a little willingness. And that's it. That's all you need. You don't have to have your higher power defined. You just have to have willingness that this can work for you. That's a little hope. And even if you can't even begin to think of that, like, are you willing to believe that it works for me? Are you willing to believe that it works for the other recovered Al-Anons on this line? That's all you need, right? Just a little bit of hope and willingness. And that will bring you to then your third and last decision, right? The step 3, made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. Now, when you're new, that sounds really scary, right? That sounds really daunting and scary because what do you mean I have to make a decision to turn my will and my life over? And guess what? We're not going to know how to do that, right? We're not going to know how to do that if we're brand new. But it's our thoughts and our actions. We're going to be turning those over to our higher power. But at this step, we're just making a decision to work the rest of the steps. And the rest will be revealed in time, right? So on page 60, it says, our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own life. So that is step 1. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, also part of step 1. And C, that God could and would if we were sought. And that's step 2. So yeah, like it's just a matter of being desperate enough to grab hold of anything, right? If your boat's sinking and someone's throwing a life preserver to you, you're going to take it, right? Like, yeah, absolutely. So being convinced we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood Him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? So again, we're not going to know how to do this, and that's just how it should be, right? We're going to keep working these steps. We're just making that decision. This is the turning point, right? Because we can keep living the life that we're living and just blotting out from our consciousness, or we can accept spiritual help, and that's what we're doing, right? And it's not difficult. We just have to be so badly beaten enough and know that we're toast to just accept this and be willing to work these steps. And okay, so let's see. On page 62 it says this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter, in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal, we are His agent. He is the Father, and we are His children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. So, yeah, basically, we're going to fire ourselves, and we're going to stop driving our wheel of life, our steering wheel of life, let's say. We're going to hand over the steering wheel to our higher power, right? Because obviously we wouldn't be here if our life was working out well, right? We're here because our life has become unmanageable, right? And we're powerless. So we're going to hand over the steering wheel and we're going to let God be in control, right? And so He's going to be our new employer, and we're just going to follow direction. And it's absolutely beautiful. And so I know, oh my gosh, I'm almost out of time. I'm going to read on page 63 is the third step, promises. So, when we work this step, we get some promises. And so it says when we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, He provided what we needed. If we kept close to Him and performed His work well, established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of His presence we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. And we get reborn, right? It's basically like a tree that's been uprooted from soil and planted in new soil. That's what we get. That's that psychic change. And I want to mention that this can take time to happen for many of us. I know for me it was pretty slow to come, but I will say once I started taking these decision steps and made my beginning, I felt different. I felt like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders. And everybody has a different experience and a different journey. And it's absolutely beautiful, but it can happen as long as we work these steps. I just want to make a quick note as well. In the back of the book on page 567 in the appendix for the spiritual experience, that's a great thing to read because it discusses the different varieties of having that psychic change or the personality change that we're going to get, right? For most of us, it's slow to come, and that's okay, right? It doesn't matter how quickly or slowly it materializes as long as it materializes. Okay, so that's steps 1, 2, and 3 in a nutshell. And I'm going to have to end this recording after I close up. Okay, so 7th tradition, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. This group does not have a payment structure in place and currently requires no overhead expenses. If you would like to fulfill Tradition 7, please direct contributions directly to the Al-Anon World Service Office by visiting alanon.org. For questions about this meeting or if you are looking for a sponsor, please send emails to alanonbigbookrecovery@gmail.com. Recordings can be accessed on YouTube by searching at Al-Anon Step Speaker in the YouTube search box. If you are interested in other Al-Anon meetings that follow the Big Book, please visit www.alanonbigbookssolutiongroup.org. And I'm going to read from the Big Book, page 164. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation, which you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. This is a great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Now let's have a moment of silence for the Al-Anon who still suffers, followed by the Lord's Prayer or a prayer of your own choosing said in silence. Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording, guys.